Okay, so we're up to Chav Dalet Amid Aleph. We just did two different versions of what was said by Rav Huna, Breder Yeshua, and one was Lakula, one was L'chumra, whether it was like the Rabbanan or like Reb Shimon. And we finished the Gemara. I think, let's see the Rashis. The Kula, come on. Do you remember how far we got?
I actually don't, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, I think we got it. Let's do Kaman, which is, I think that's where we got up to. So Kaman Amrina and Dishtei Rishios Tinu. According to who? Do we say it's like two different domains and therefore it prohibits the carrying of one to the other, even though it's not more than a base of Sayim? But since one is a karfef, one's a chutzer, you cannot carry from one to the other, and that was the chumradik approach. Karabanan, the pliyul Reb Shimon Perikol Gagos, okay, because they argue with Reb Shimon in Perikol Gagos later on in the Masechta V'Yamrinon Kol Chad V'Chad Rishus Atzmo, and they say that every domain is a domain unto itself. Yavagav Delekad Yorin Behu. The Lusra Adadi, we might have actually done this, even though there are no people living there, not more than one, that would make it obvious that you can't carry from one domain to the other, because if it's owned by two different people, then it's more clear that you need some kind of a merger, and without one, you would not be able to carry. But even though there are no diorin, the lesser that would prohibit one against the other, you still cannot carry from one to the other. That's Rabbanan. While the last version, okay, which is Rav Yirmiyah Midifte, Masin L'Kula, he goes and learns that inference in the more lenient fashion, meaning that Filu Amiyut Beis Hasayim, even if the minority is a Beis Hasayim, the Mikra Karfef, which has, it doesn't take up the majority of the space to nullify the other half, even if it is a Beis Hasayim, the Mikra Karfef, where it now has its own identity of being a karfef because it's two saws. Kivin the ba'anfei nafshe, since it stands by itself. So, I'm sorry, kivin the ba'anfei nafshe shari. Since if you look at it on its own, it would be mutter because it's essentially two saws, two base saws that are surrounded for non-residential purposes, which would still be valid. The only time that it gets problematic is when it's more than two saws, but up to two saws is fine. So since looking at it on its own, it would be okay if you had this situation. But it's not just that. You've got now an additional chutzner open to it, which is not the planted area. Hashinami shari, but it still becomes mutav lo asri adadi. And they don't prohibit one area to the other to carry from one to the other or from it itself, like the Rabbanan would hold. No, he would say it's mutter. Had there been a mechitza between them, have you Reb Shimon, right? It would have been mutter to go from one to the other. According to Reb Shimon, who says that you can go from the gag to the chotza to the karfeif if they're all surrounded, and even though now they are open, where there's a breach between them, right? There's no fence between the karfeif and the chotzer in this particular case, between the planted area and the non-planted area. You have not been breached into an area that you cannot carry, because essentially they have the same identity, so to speak. And therefore it all would be okay. But the minute you would go to a point where it's more than two saws, two base saws worth more than 5,000 square amas, if you went beyond that, that would become a carmelis. That would become prohibited. And then Rav Shimon would, of course, agree. That would be a totally different situation. Rav Shimon would agree you can't carry from the chutzah to the karfeif because that becomes a karfeif more than two saws, which is not enclosed for residential purposes. But over here, where they're open to one another, I raise a kolach difference makom asala. this is a continuation of that scenario, and in this case where one of them would be Hukel Fadira. Would be Yosef Beisasayim, which is Shlo Hukel Ladira, since one of them would be a prohibited area, and you have now an opening between a chutzner, which technically would be okay to carry in because it's a chutzner, it's not a karfeif, but here it's nifrat to zelazare kolechad nifrat mokom osloi. It becomes a breach of the place where I can't carry into, and since I can't, you can't carry even in any one of them, and that prohibits any usage. That's why it had to be limited to a case of two saws beis hasayim as opposed to yosem beis hasayim. Okay, so that takes care of yesterday's Gemara, and we are good to go. So we're going to go back and quote the Brisa. So the original quote from yesterday's Brisa was, "What did you plant there? Did you plant seeds? In which case, it's not it's not seen as a hookah fladira, and because you don't really walk around those places, that's a place where you no longer are going to, spazier, and therefore it loses its permissible identity. It's no longer hookah fladira, as opposed to plantings of trees where it becomes nice and you can spazier there. You like the shade. You take a nice little walk in the orchard. That's still considered hookah fladira. It retains its old original status. Okay, so if it's not aruba, fine. Some of you does on this concept of planting trees and being mutter to walk around there because it's still considered hookah fadira. It's only true if the trees are made up with rows, where it was comfortable to be able to to walk around there in a comfortable fashion, where the trees weren't sort of bumping into each other, and you had no real nice place to go. Rav Nachman disagrees, and he doesn't go like Avimi. He's even if it's not made that way, an orchard is still nice and airy, and there's no problem with seeing it as a continuation of the the abode of where you live there, and it's I can still use it to further my to enhance my living aspect. My Yehuda Ikla Lebei Rav Huna. So just a story that sort of supports one of these positions. My Yehuda Ikla Lebei Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Rav Yehuda came to the place of Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Chazinu de Lahanu Deloy Avidi Tzavlos. He saw that they had an orchard there, planting a bunch of trees being planted that were planted, and it was not made in rows, wasn't done in an organized fashion, much more chaplap. And yet the fact that it was made that way did not prevent them from carrying there, and they were carrying in that area. So Amalei said to him, don't you hold like Avimi, who said that if it's not made in these rows in a very organized fashion, then it's not seen as facilitating your living there, and therefore it's usher. So he said to Rav Huna bar Yehuda, seems to be inappropriate. You're going against Avimi. Amalei, he says, no, it's not at all. I know Rav Nachman's really, I like Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman holds its mutter even if it's not made that way. So I'm a Rav Nachman man, and I'm definitely good to go. Rashi, it's tablos, about the middle of the narrow lines. Netuin shuros, v'nol shevesham. It's made nicely with rows, and it's very pleasant to sit there and to read your Mishpacha magazine in the shade. It's all nice. So he came to Lebei Rav Huna, Yosef Beisasayim Have, and it was a place more than 2 base saws worth. Vuka Fadira. Okay, and it was surrounded for residential purposes, so that would certainly at that point be fine to carry. Venita Achraken, and then afterwards they planted there trees which might or might not nullify that area, depending on what the status of that area was. So he was a little surprised that they seemed to ignore Avimi, and the answer was they follow Rav Nachman, and it's not a problem. Okay, so ready for the next Gemara. Back to the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. So Nachman says the name of Shmuel Karfeif Yosem Beis Sosayim Shal Yehuka Fladira. If you have a Karfeif, more than 2 saws that was not surrounded for residential purposes, so at this point you certainly cannot carry there. And now, Keteru Osa, what should he do if he wants to now redirect it in a more residential way? So you want to change the surroundings for residential purposes. So just the fact that you're living there, it's not going to be enough, because when you made the wall, then it was made originally for non-residential purposes. So you have to now reconstruct the wall, don't you? So Ephraim doesn't look happy. Let's take a look at Rashi. Yeah. So Keteru Osa. Oh, actually, let's read a little further. Now we'll do the Rashi. So what do you do when you want to you have to re-establish it. You have to remake those walls for the purposes. You have to knock the whole wall down and rebuild the whole thing. So no, the halach is not going to make you go that far, but you do have to do something clearly that redirects it in a residential fashion. Building a bunch of houses there apparently is not going to be enough. Let's see.
That's the part that I'm unhappy about.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, just because you have that house now in the middle, you think that should be enough.
Yeah, just put a house there and it's done.
Okay, no, well, okay.
It's not true.
Right, that's why you came today. Okay, so let's see. Plus the coffee, of course. Kate. One more time. Kate said, "So what do you do? You make an opening more than 10, which at this point renders the enclosure unenclosed, because if you don't have an opening more than 10, that's too big of a break. That's going to nullify the enclosure. For Gojo, and then you fix it up and you refence it, and you narrow that 11 amma opening to 10. And once it goes to 10, 10 is the magic number which makes it narrow enough to be considered still enclosed, and that's all you need. And then you're good to go. Okay, so let's take a look at Rashi. Keter Osa, what should you do? Actually, no, we back it up one more. Karfev Yosef Yisayim Shal Hukah Fadira. The Achar Kain Bon Et Dira. And after that, you built a dira there, and you built a nice little house. If you have the Sefer number 71, okay, and you have a nice house there. So you'd think, as Ephraim said, it would be enough, but apparently not. Avinu Lakamon, the Lakamon is the Seifa Amud. Okay, Hukav Shalol Dira, if it was surrounded for non-residential usage. Ubsof Pasach Loi Pesach Diras Beiso, and then you opened up an opening to your house. That's a case of Rechav we're going to learn about later on. You have a backyard. Unlike the backyards nowadays where the doors open to the backyards, in those days everything opened to the front. The back was just simply there and really not doing too much, and you didn't even have a doorway from your back house, from your house to the backyard. It was just totally non-used, and now you decide to use it. So you make a doorway now where people are going to move their functions a little bit to the back. So does making a doorway enough? He says no. Lo mahani. Umsof pasach lePesach diraso diras beso. Then you made an opening in the back to go out to the rechava. Lo mahani does not help. So contrary to your gut feeling, the surroundings have to be l'shem shemayim, l'shem hukah fladira. And in this case, the way to do it is you nullify the wall by making it invalid, by making an 11 amma break. You then fill in 1 amma, and then you're gavaldik. You're good to go. Keteros, the next Rashi. Keteros, a pros papir to yosem yeser. They have a kamisha ein loy mechitza. Says now it becomes a situation where it's like you're not enclosed because your break is way too big. V'goider pirza, okay, and you make a fence and you start building that fence and you close it up. You close that opening up to the point where it's now a valid enclosure. Umamida aleser, you make it to 10, which is not a lot of work. You know, it could be a half an hour, it could be 1 hour, whatever. It's not a big deal. Pesach. It's like it was open and now it's being enclosed for valid living purposes. Nifsecha loy It's like an opening which is now being surrounded for the purpose of residential areas to the area that it was opened up to, I guess. So that the dira is open to the area around it. The olam be'inon sheyigdar l'shem dira.
Yeah, this is where he made the opening into the from the dira into the chutzner, into the car.
Right.
And it didn't work, and now it does work. That original opening now is effective. The doorway, remember the
doorway to the Rechava, yeah. Okay, right. He says, right. The Liolam Be'inon, because even though we said the doorway doesn't work, but now this will work to make that doorway into a valid doorway, because what have you done? You've now fenced it in properly. The Liolam Be'inon Shigdol Shem Dira. You have to make that fence for the purposes of living. Yosem Eser Amis. The Liolam Be'inon Shigdol L'Shem Dira.
I don't have that.
You don't have Yosem Eser Amis?
No, I don't have L'Shem Dira.
Oh, well, mine is in the brackets, but I have L'Shem Dira.
That's fine.
The Olam Be'inon Sheyigdar Yosem Eser Amis. Okay, I guess you have to break it open. I don't know. Yigdar normally means fencing in, but you have to fence in an area that was more than 10 amas, because you have to nullify the original wall. The only way to do that is to fence in an area that was previously more than 10 amas. The parts eser levad v'gadra, because if you just opened up 10 and then you refence it after 10, okay, lo choshev hahu hekav l'shem dira. That's not called being hukaf l'shem dira. Ela kamish asa pesach. It's just like you made another opening. That esel yolam avi pesach, because it's still an opening, a valid opening. So if you open up to 10 and then you reclose it or whatever you want to do there, that's not going to be good enough, because the fact that you open up to 10 is still the original enclosure was still a valid enclosure. We look at any opening up into 10 as a pesach, as a doorway. You have to break the pesach mentality, and you have to make it like a pirza. So you have to make it up to more than 10, up to 11, and then you're good. So what do you do? So just I
thought what we're trying to do is to break the partition. The entire partition is no good because it has
right. But if it's only up to 10, then it's not viewed as breaking the partition, because that's viewed as a pesach.
Okay.
What's the problem?
It doesn't seem to be saying it that way. All right, whatever.
Well, I think he's saying it. Yeah, I think he.
You seem to be saying something a little different.
One more time. Why? He says the parts eser levad. If you broke open an area of only 10 for gadra, and then you refenced it, that's not called being surrounded for the sake of living. It's only like you made an opening. That because up until 10 amas, they're never viewed as pirtzes. They're always viewed as psachim, and a pesach is viewed as still the same original. Right? If you went around and made a bunch of openings there up until 10, that would not change that diagram in 71. It would still be.
But he seems to be focusing on hekav l'shem dira rather than saying that you haven't removed the hekav period. You haven't removed the partition. It's still there. Well, I mean, it's just.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm pointing it out. That it's just.
Yeah, okay, I think that's what he's saying. Okay, let's see. Parat Amma, what do you have to do? Parat Amma, Avol Stima, Parat Amma Eitzel Stima, V'Godra. Oh, no, that's weiter. Okay, so fine. So we are good to go. So that's what you have to do. You have to make a break of more than 10, refence that area to be 10 or less, and that little work. So you can end up doing a lot of work, and it does not help you. You end up doing a little work, and it will help you, because you can make a bunch of openings up until 10 amas, and yet you haven't done anything. All you have is a bunch of psachim there that don't really do anything for you. But if you just you open up a 10 to an 11, and then you reclose it back to 10, then you're good. Because that you made it no longer surrounded, you made it back into being surrounded with Shem Dira, and you've nullified the original enclosure. Okay, so Yiboilu, back to the Gemara. So now we have an interesting shaila. Yiboilu parat amma v'godar amma, uparat amma v'godra acha shim liyosa mieser mahu. So let's say the guy didn't want to do it the conventional way, So the thing was completely enclosed. Or maybe let's say it was enclosed, let's say like in diagram 72, it was enclosed it was one amma gap. So you got a lot of work to do here to get it to 11 ammas. So either you can knock the whole thing down to one shot, and you have 11 ammas, and then you just build one, and you're good to go. Or this guy, I guess maybe was afraid that the elephants are going to come crashing in, so he wasn't willing to do a total 11 amma break at one time. So he did it piecemeal. He broke and he restructured. Then he broke another amma and he refixed it. Broke another amma and he refixed it. So at the end of the day, you have 10 amma of new wall, which I guess he considers a blackened wall as new wall. So you have the 10 amma new wall with the 1 amma breaks. So if you go back in time and you look at what was old, you have an 11 amma opening of old stuff. And now you have 10 ammas of new stuff. So, or you don't even need 10 ammas, whatever. But the point is that do you look at the piecemeal as basically you can look at all the old, the new wall as really not existing, and therefore whatever is new doesn't really count to what was originally, because whatever you have now, you really rebuild for the purposes of dira. So, or do you have to have an actual break of 11 amas at one particular point in time? And you don't have that in this case. So can you do it piecemeal or can you not do it piecemeal? That's a shaila. So one more time, Ibayluhu parts amavagadra amma parts amavagadra till you have it to the point where it's more than 10 mahu. What's halacha? So interesting shaila that you have to sort of have this breach all at one time, or can you do it slowly but surely, and in a sense sort of view whatever you've done, and connect it to the old status? So Amalei, he answered back, Lav Hainu the Tan, isn't this what we learned in the Mishnah? Kol kli bali batim shiron kirimonim. Okay, we know we had this concept other places, that when you have a balabas who made a kli, now we know that if a kli becomes tamei and you destroy that kli and you nullify its usage, then the halacha is the tumah goes away. Right? When you break the status of that kli being a usable kli, that causes the tumah to disappear. And if you want to refix it now and make it a kli, it's like essentially a new kli with the tumah having been removed. So what's the shear of a kli? Let's say you have a mug or a bowl, whatever. How big of a hole does that bowl have to render the bowl useless and the tumah having nullified? So the shear is karimain, okay? Because basically you can still put a baseball in that thing and it'll hold it. But if it's so big like a remind where baseball will fall through, what good is an item that you can't it can't even hold a baseball or a pomegranate, which pretty close to one another. So that's halacha. Any kli that you want to nullify its usage, to nullify its tumah, the shear is the size of a pomegranate. Okay, that's nice to know. So what does it have to do with anything here? Ubayi Chizkiya had a shaila on that halacha. Nikev kemotzi zayis. Let's say you made a hole. So you have a kli that's tumah. You have a bowl that's tumah, and you would like to nullify that tumah and get that tumah out of there. I guess maybe you don't have a mikveh to just throw into the mikveh. You want to find another way to get that tumah off. So you make a hole the size of a zayis. And then you close it up. Then you made another hole of a zayis, and then you close that up. And at the end of the day, you made enough holes in it that would add up to the size of a pomegranate. Okay, let's just let's just say 4 olives equal a pomegranate. So you broke into the kli 4 olive size thing, but you didn't do it all at one time. You filled up each olive hole before you made the next hole the size of an olive. So, but at the end of the day, combined, you have the size of a rimon, so of a pomegranate. So it's mamash l'chor, the exact same issue. Do you need to create that hole all at one time to render the keli tahar, or do you say it's good enough to just do it piecemeal, exactly like the shaila by the wall? Can you must you nullify it at one time by making a breach of 11 amas, or you can make a breach of 1 amma at a time and rebuild it and just keep going, and eventually you have a breach of 11 of old wall no longer there, and all the new stuff doesn't really count because it's new, reestablished for residential purposes. Okay, the Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, and Rabbi Yochanan told him, Rabbi Shani Salanu, you taught us a halacha that should answer your shaila. Okay, what halacha do you teach us? What mission do you teach us that would answer this shaila? Little bays. Okay, Perek Chavav Mishnah Dalit. Okay, so it looks like it's in Kalim. Okay, so let's see. So sandal shnifsaka achas me'oznav. So a similar type of situation. You have a shoe that they used to have these ears. It's like a sandal that the way you would close it is you'd flap the two flaps and tie them together. So without those two flaps, the sandal is rendered useless. I guess it's those flaps on the side. I mean, right, that's what you put the string through. Right, so you don't have anything to put the string through. You're looking at the diagram of 74. Yeah, so diagram 74 shows you what those two flaps look like, and you put the string through, and then you tie it. So without a flap, without two flaps, it's going to be, rendered useless. What kind of shoe doesn't allow you to close it up? It's not called a shoe. So sandal shenifska achas bi'azah. Let's say now you have a sandal that one of its ears fell off, the tikna, and you fix it. You put a new ear on. Okay, tame medrus. So we know we know there's a lach of tame medrus. We also learned this before that a zav that steps or sits or leans on something that's used for reclining or any type of pressure, that's the way it's normally, like a cushion, like a bed, like a chair, or like a sandal. Right, a sandal certainly is the ultimate receptacle of a person's weight. So if you wore that sandal as a zav, that sandal not only is a rishon, which is conventional. If an av touches something, it becomes a rishon. Here, Tumas Medrash renders it into an av, and therefore it has the highest level of tumah called Tumas Medrash, which is mamish like the zav itself, and it would be able to render other kalim tameh in turn, which normally does not happen. It cannot happen typically where a rishon cannot affect another rishon, and it cannot make another kli, rather tameh. So let's learn the halacha. Sandal shivsaka achas bi'azna v'tikna, and you fix it tameh medrus. The medrus is still there because you've not nullified. You could function with only one ear. The kli, right, could function with only one ear because you can still use one ear to wrap it around. And I saw one of those pictures shows that it's still usable with only one flap. This shniya v'tikna, you then had the second flap ripped off and you fixed that one. Tar min medrus, you have now nullified it because you have two new flaps here, and neither flap at this point is of the original flaps. So the shoe that became tameh medrus is a shoe that doesn't have any flaps. What you have here are two new flaps, two new ears, so to speak, that will nullify the Tumas Medrus. Avol Tameh Maga Medrus. But it still will be Tameh as having touched the Medrus, because the old flap, as it's about to leave, is still from the old Tumah, and it touches the shoe that, leaving the flaps out, is still usable as a Kli, it's something, so it will render it Tameh. So, but it's a lower level Tumah. It's not Tumas Medrus. Tumas Medrus is left, but what you have is a regular rishon because it touched a medrus. It touched the old flap, and as a result, in a sense, it touched the old shoe, and it retains its a rishon status. It's a lower level, but it is tamei, but not nearly to the same extent. Okay, v'amrit Allah. Okay, and you said about this particular Mishnah that you taught us, Ma'ishim Rishonah, the Kaim Mishnah. What's the difference that when the first flap is still there, when the first flap is gone, the second flap is there? So the second flap is gone, the first flap is there. So in either case, you never lost your identity completely because you always had at least one flap functioning in this case. Okay, so what's the concept that makes that we were sort of already let the cat out of the bag, so we sort of know the answer, but this is all a part of the analysis. I don't understand. He asked him, what's the difference? As long as you have one flap there, the identity of that shoe still is maintained in its original form. The Amrit, and you answered Allah, you answered us about this case. The reason why, when the second flap tears off, you lose a medrash status is Panam Chadash's Bolakan. Because it's a new face. They're both brand new flaps. They're not old flaps. So you don't connect the new stuff to the old stuff. You look at it as a completely new entity. And therefore, the old shoe that was Thomas Medris, when the Zav stepped on it and made it Thomas Medris, that shoe is no longer here. Because both of the flaps were not, that are on it now, were not here at the time of the Medris. And it's viewed as Panam Chadash's Bolakan. So you don't have a valid shoe with valid flaps of the old shoe. Hachanami, and therefore we can extrapolate here too. Panam Chadash's Bolakan. You look at everything new, and you say that just like the wall will be the same way. That these are all considered new fencing, and the old fencing is gone. So it would be the same thing that we don't see this as an enclosed area of the old form. It's all new. And if it's all new, indeed, you had an 11 amma break of the old fencing. So, okay, I mean, that's how we're extrapolating it over. And therefore, in other words, his answer was on the shaila of the remind, right? That was when the discussion happened between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan, right? Was of Yamla Rabbi Yochanan, right? So Yamla Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe, right? So Chizkiah asked Shaila, what do you do in a case where you knock out the olive, the bowl, just an olive at a time? To which Rabbi Yochanan answered that isn't this the same case? And we say Panam Chadashos, and we want to bring this into extrapolate over to our case. It's really a double step. It's this case, it's a sandal to the Remind case, and from the Remind case to the wall case. But on the bowl case, where he answered him that the shoe should be an indicator to the bowl, Kari Allah, he said about him, Chizki said about Rabbi Yochanan, less than barinish. This is not a man. This is an angel, not a man. Or Ikid Amrei, or other people say, Kagoin din barnash. This is a man. This is a person of a great stature. This is an incredible person. Look at his brilliance. I was able to extrapolate from that case over to our case. So either he was saying he's almost, superhuman, or he's saying this is a real Talmud Chacham, a real Chashiva person. Either way, it was a big compliment, and with that, we've resolved our issue. Panam Chadash's Bolakan is a concept that would allow the fencing to work in the way you want to do it. You want to do an am at a time, that would be legit. Okay, let's do the Rashis. Paratz Amma, Eitzel Stima, okay, where it was closed, you opened up an Amma, Vagadran you fix of the old Paratz Amma, Eitzel Stima, Amma HaChadasha, then you made another opening next to the new fencing, and you did it again, Vagadra, the Loi Paratz Yun Ammas Kecha, where you don't have a break of 10 or more at one time. Vagadar Esr Ammas Vasachas, Elamat Hayaparatz Vagadar Miyad, right? You don't have the break that was really the designed concept that you really wanted to have an 11 amma break and then fill up one amma, that you don't have, but you did it piecemeal. Is that good enough? So and you kept doing this until you actually got to that point of more than 11. Since you didn't make the break of 10 at one time, and you didn't make the fencing at one time, Bezu l'shem dira. That's not called being surrounded for the sake of living. Odilma, to make it residential. Odilma kivin nahasha miya have a chidish shalek of yosim esa. Since right now there is more than 10 amas of new wall here, so you just have to use your imagination to picture that all this break the old wall wasn't here. So this is like a new break of 11 amas. Either it's enclosed, but it's enclosed with new stuff. So all you need is a little bit of an imagination. It will be considered being surrounded for residential purposes.
I think this explains why the Rashi used that language beforehand. It was implied that you invalidated the mechitzas, but here you don't have to invalidate the mechitza.
Okay. Okay, we're good. I'm not sure. I don't really.
Because you've never invalidated the original mechitza. There was always a mechitza around there.
See, that's why. Yeah, that's when you make the Pesach. It's not good enough to make a Pesach because you never invalidated.
No, what I'm saying is that if you have a mechitza, you do it and you break one at a time. It never got into a status of this area is not surrounded. This
Right.
area is always surrounded.
Or do you say no?
Right. But
That's a shot.
that could be why Rashi mentioned it earlier, because in reality you don't actually have to break it apart.
Okay.
No, huh?
No, maybe I'm sure. Okay, I have to go back and read the Rashi and see
Okay, fine, okay.
see what you're adding. That Okay, so let's see here. Kol kli balibatim. So now we're going to use the aspect of the pomegranate case with the bowl as to indicate whatever. We're going to be right. We're going to bring this in to answer our shaila. Okay, so we know that all kli of balabatim legabe kli eitz tanino b'sachlis kalim. It was mentioned when it comes to wooden kalim, wooden utensils, vessels in b'sachlis kalim. Shiuron karimayim. The shear is the size of a pomegranate. What kind of shear are we talking about? The tamer tumasan, to nullify it from its tumah and to make it pure, to make it no longer tumah. Avapachos mikan, but less than that amount. A person is still going to say, you know what? I can still if I can put a baseball in here and hold baseballs, that's going to be good enough. I can use it for something. Even though I used to have my pens in here and my pens are all falling out, but I can use it for something. So that does not nullify the kli. Shuran krimayim. Okay, nikev kamotzi montar. So the shear is a remind, meaning if you made a hole the size of a pomegranate, it now renders it tar because a pomegranate is going to fall through. So you really don't. You can't even use it for anything. Because of a nikev, then you made a new hole, eitzel astima. Okay, where you had the close, you made an opening of an olive. Then you made. And you close it up. Then you made another opening of an olive next to the enclosure, the new enclosure, v'tikna, and then you fixed it up. V'huadin kilo tikna nami adayin tomei medris hu. Even if you didn't fix it up, it would still be Thomas Medris. Okay, this is now we've just transitioned to the sandal case. Okay, because that's where Thomas Medris comes in. So you broke off one of the ears broke off, one of the flaps broke off, and now you fix it. Even if you didn't fix it, it would still be Thomas Medris, because you still have one. Tikna, and the fact that you said that he fixed it, Larbusa, it's coming for a bigger chiddush. The lav hachi, because if it wouldn't be that you fixed it, you wouldn't have to say the second one broke. Right, in other words, right in this point, even without fixing it, it would still be Thomas Medris. But you need to talk about fixing it so that when the next one breaks, that's where the whole issue comes in. You have two brand new flaps here, and that you need that fixing for the next case of the case. You wouldn't have to talk about the. You wouldn't be able to get to the next chiddush of the second one breaking and ultimately having no flaps here of the old ilk. So that's why we had to talk about fixing it and putting a new one on, and that would be a bigger chiddush. Even though you have something on, it still doesn't count. Okay, tar min medris. So if ultimately the second flap also tore off, that now becomes purified from the high level tumah of medris. The sula have a kli because it's no longer a kli. You have chazil medras milatame su adam v'kelim. It doesn't have the ability to have that high level status of medras to be able to then be mitama adam v'kelim, because that's the real nafkamina. It's one of a couple nafkaminas, but one of the most fundamental nafkaminas of being tumas medras or not being tumas medras is, can you contaminate a man or a kli? And the answer is no longer can you, because by having the two flaps both having broken off, even though you put a new one on, that it loses that status of the old tumah, because that old tumah doesn't have any flaps. That shoe that we had here an hour ago. Okay, tarmin amedris, right? We did that. Avol klihu. Okay, but it's still viewed as a utensil. The chazi l'tash v'shachrina. It does. You can still use that sandal even without the flaps for some other purpose. V'dayin tumas maga medris halav, and therefore it's still considered tumas maga medris. It touched a medris. Shrei b'shas prishasa mina ozen. At the moment of separation of that ear, when the flap moved away, shadayin hu medris l'kabel tuma. It was when it was still connected. That last second, it actually touched that medris in its departure from it. L'tamei kelim. Okay, to be able to be Talmud Kalim, Kibel Tumah Yaviv. It was able to receive Tumah from its father, so to speak. Have a Rishon L'Tumah, Matam Ochel Mashkin. It's not, so it retains the status of a Rishon that it can now contaminate not a Keli, but it could contaminate drinks and food. So it is able to maintain its old status, and we will finish these Rashis tomorrow.